Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hopeful that our bill will get completely through the process. There's absolutely no reason it shouldn't. As we all know, millions of people are trafficked every year. Traffickers prey on the most vulnerable, trapping them in a horrific cycle of abuse that often goes overlooked. The children, young adults, women, and men that are coerced into forced labor and sex trafficking have their autonomy stripped and livelihoods damaged. Addressing this global scourge requires an international commitment. The United States is the leading global voice on combating human trafficking and has been so for decades. We provide training, consultations, and aid to civil society and government actors around the world to better prosecute traffickers, prevent further trafficking, and protect victims. It is a shame, however, that some governments participate in state-sponsored patterns of trafficking and further victimize the most vulnerable. Other governments become indifferent to trafficking and offer no permanent solutions to ending the pattern in their countries. Thankfully, there are some countries that have put significant investment to combating trafficking and protecting victims. We recognize their efforts and thank them for this enduring pledge. I look forward to hearing today about what the department sees as biggest challenges and biggest opportunities. I equally look forward to hearing more about USAID's important role in combating trafficking and what more can be done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Ambassador, you described the situation with scam operations, particularly in Asia, and the forced criminality. I guess we don't usually think of that sort of thing when we think of human trafficking. Obviously, the intersection of those two is interesting. Could you give us some specific examples of how that works so we can kind of think about this a little more clearly?
Thank you so much for that question, because it is a really emerging issue that is of critical importance for us to better get our arms around. What we are seeing happening is that there are frequently Chinese criminal gangs that are behind this. They are posting job opportunities on Facebook and other social media places that appear to be legitimate. And interesting,
in China or in other places?
They are posting these in all over the world. We've identified victims from 35 countries. Many times they are from the Philippines and Malaysia, Indonesia, but we have identified individuals from Japan, the United States, the UK.
But it's emanating from China.
Yes.
So that's where I get a little confused. How do they enslave someone an ocean away from them? How do they do this? Is it
they post the job, the individual accepts the job. They are frequently transiting through Thailand or Cambodia. Frequently they're going to these compounds. A lot of these are leftover empty buildings from COVID. They're frequently located in Cambodia, in Burma, across the border from Thailand. Individuals think they're going for a legitimate IT job that is going to utilize their skills, linguistic skills, IT skills. When they get there, they are literally locked in a room and they are not allowed to leave. And they are given a quota of how much money they have to get from scam operations. And if they don't make that quota, they are tortured, they are deprived of food and water, and so they are under intense pressure to meet this quota. Some of these, reason we know how this is happening, some of them have escaped to tell us about it. There was recently, and this was actually in the news, a cyber scam compound in the Philippines where more than 1,000 individuals were located and freed, but they were from all over, as we said, 35 countries, targeting a unique population that isn't normally what we think of as the target or vulnerable to trafficking, because these are people with education, linguistic skills, and often IT skills.
Interesting. And did you say you had people that got caught up in that even from the United States? Is that?
Yes, sir. To my knowledge, so far, there was one individual from the UK, one individual from the US, one individual from Japan. We actually spoke about it when I had the opportunity to visit Japan earlier this year. And then many individuals from other Southeast Asian countries, but really they're individuals from Africa. Because one of the benefits is if they get a broad target, then that individual can target secondary victims for their online scams from the country that they are from. So they sound like a person from the UK, the US, a country in Africa, and they're more effective at running these romance scams and fraudulent scams.
So they're lured there and then held against their will once they get there?
Yes, sir.
Is that how it works?
Yes, sir.
My time's limited here, but I do want to touch on what I think is probably the most obvious matter we hear about in the news, and that's the Uyghurs in China. Tell me about that. What do you do about that? What is the efforts that are being targeted at that?
I think this is a situation where we need to use all tools available. It is not something that there's going to be a silver bullet for. Thank you. I appreciate you raising this issue. As you will note, the Trafficking in Persons report goes into significant detail about the PRC's inappropriate, horrible human rights abuses, specifically their forced labor of Uyghurs and other ethnic and religious minorities frequently located in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. And so one tool is call it out in the TIP report, not only what China is doing, but also, which we also call out in the TIP report, places where this is occurring in other countries. So for example, we flag in the TIP report that China's Belt and Road Initiative is impacting 13 countries. And so that is brought up in each of those countries' narratives so that those countries can be more aware of what's going on and more proactive to ensure that their own citizens are not falling prey to China's tactics, as well as Chinese citizens. But in addition to formal Belt and Road Initiative projects, we also have identified PRC-affiliated projects, not Belt and Road Initiative, but just PRC-affiliated, and we have followed up forced labor trends in 14 additional countries where this is called out. I think that in addition to the TIP report, we need to use, and we are using, our diplomatic and multilateral diplomacy, bilateral diplomacy to talk to these countries to make sure that people are not unwittingly supporting these programs under the guise of getting infrastructure in their country. And a third important area is the Trafficking in Persons Office participates in the Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force, where we are aggressively working on implementing, thanks to Congress, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. We are adding entities to this list so that we can make sure that Americans are not unwittingly using goods and products that were made by individuals held in slavery in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region.
Well, it's a difficult subject because at the same time that we're trying to tamp down the things that are going on between U.S. and China, China is very sensitive to this. They deny it's going on. They deny it's going on, and say that we're dead wrong on that. So, well, how do you thread that needle?
Very carefully, sir, very carefully. I think that we have to both try to improve that diplomatic relationship. I actually believe that we can do what we can from afar. We can work on the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. We can try to prevent goods from coming in. And certainly we can encourage other countries to do a better job of making sure that they're not unwittingly supporting China through these infrastructure projects. But of course, the best way would be if China changed themselves. And that's only going to happen, as you wisely pointed out, if we can have a better relationship with them. That would be the most, direct way. And so I think that we need to use every single one of those tools because this is a problem that's going to require it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Time's up.